Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lifting. This is another disclosure in the media of Elder Scrolls. I'm here with Ryan Polenkarns once again,
Whoa.
and we're going to talk about soul traps and soul trapping, like soul crystals and the like, in this episode. I find this very interesting. The parallels. I know we talked about necromancy on that Halloween episode that all of you have seen, but this is along the same kind of flavoring, same kind of thread as that. So Ryan, go right ahead.
All right. Well, to start, soul magic in the Elder Scrolls is its own thing. It does get lumped in with necromancy a lot, but necromancy and conjuration have more to do with reanimation and bringing things in from other dimensions, whereas this has to do with manipulating soul energy and magic and using magic to control a soul as a raw form of power most of the time. And so to get in with the soul magic bit, we have to look at these. They're called soul gems. They are crystalline structures that are not natural, apparently. There are a few places in the Elder Scrolls where they can be mined, like in Blackreach and Skyrim, though there's no explanation as to why. A lot of people think that they're made through some kind of magical process, but we don't actually know. And some people also think that they're like holdovers of this magic that helped create the universe type thing.
Mhm.
But basically, they are crystals that can capture soul energy. There's various different sizes, and basically it's based on the size is how powerful they are, with one exception, and that's black soul gems, which are corrupted soul gems. They will explain what a black and a white soul is here in a minute, but basically a black soul gem is a corrupted soul gem that makes it have more power, but you have to do darker things to get them. In Oblivion, famously, you have to do a ritual, and you actually corrupt grand soul gems. So the big one down here at the bottom into black soul gems during the Necromancer's Moon. In Skyrim, they can kind of just be found in their already corrupted state, and in Morrowind, I'm not exact. I know they're there, but I don't know if they have like a reason for them being there.
Okay. Okay. If you're wanting to show images, I'm not seeing any of them.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I forgot. There we go. These are the soul gems. So this is the grand soul gem, but there's different levels, and they basically the bigger they are, generally speaking, the more powerful. With the only exception being the black soul gem.
But I find interesting though about this is there are real elements that are dimensional fusions, like also from the times of the creation of the universe. Like say with Shungite, for instance, the Earth generated it dimensionally to counterbalance the black goo, essentially. It's kind of like its antithesis, even though Gravine and other elements are like the cousin of Shungite. You know, they're related, but they're not related, sort of thing. One's the antithesis of the other. It's soul gems, also amethyst. I came to find out is an element like that, where it's like say if a dimensional world, let's say, kind of like in The Witcher, where you have the conjunction of the spheres and you have those portal entry points. If you get one of those entry points in reality, and there's like this, not a schism, but if there's like a rub, you sometimes on the edges of those rubs or on the edges of those collisions of different dimensional states, universes, or even other realities, other dimensional worlds, things of that nature, and on the portal entries. Sometimes you'll see plants that came from there, kind of like the Shivering Isles in Oblivion, where you saw the plants from the Shivering Isles on the outside of the portal before you go in. It's like that sometimes. But then also it's like that with stones on the edges of dimensional fusions or dimensional rub. And the soul gems seem to be something like that, like either from the creation of the universe, or you have like something like gold that's like Tears of the Sun, where it came from the sun, essentially. So you have like different elements that are like that, but for dimensional, from dimensional reasons, and some animals like also in The Witcher and creatures come through those different entryways and alignments. Then there's also these dimensional worlds, and I find that very interesting that this has come up because I've had a lot of synchronicities pop up recently that had to do with different spheres that and different worlds that are within the dimensions that these different elements come from, and also get soul trapped too, like the soul cairn, like what we were going to talk about in the Ideal Masters, where we've talked about before, and also not just soul traps like in the mechanical spheres that people know about, or like the moon, Mars, or Saturn. Like Saturn's the most famous of all of them for that, but that it actually sends down the mind control back using soul energy back down through our 5G network, and it was originally the Unisphere in 1964 during the World's Fair when that was activated. So it's this AI, like essentially God, if you want to call it that, that the plugins for this AI are on some of the different planets through different monoliths, like Phobos, Deimos for Mars, and I found out we have one as well. These are plugins to a quantum AI, but aside from that, you have the dimensional worlds where some of these types of soul gems and types of things like this come from. I've even seen crystals that look like this that have a weird property to them, like almost like a vacuum. So I've run into stones like that. They're just basing it off of an idea like that. It seems to me anyway.
Okay, so how does one get a soul into one of these gems to then use it as energy? Well, they use a soul trap spell or a magical item enchanted to trap souls into to take souls and put them into gems when something's killed by it, or shortly after they've been struck with it. If they die, it'll still send the soul into a gem of the user. Depending on how the user chooses to enchant the weapon, it's generally a few second window. So if with a bow you set it to 0, the fact that your arrow strikes it and generally speaking would kill the target instantly with a well-placed shot, their soul goes in as soon as the arrow enters them to one of the soul gems you have. This is a very common enchantment to use for players in game. With melee weapons, leaving a window of seconds there after a hit for someone to be killed in combat generally allows for more souls to be captured. Especially if you're in a war party, say, and one person has a weapon that can capture souls, but another person strikes them down, but that person still got a hit in before the other person, the initial enemy, went down, they'd still get the soul. But now we need to talk about a glaring issue: the difference in types of souls. So, generally speaking, animals and beasts, beasts as in like monsters, things like trolls, giants, mammoths, corrupted races, so the Falmer, which have kind of lost their sentience and now are sort of like a corrupted goblin-like thing. Goblins as well, all have what are called white souls. White souls are like, I guess, natural in a sense that they're not considered inhumane to kill and use the souls as a power source. Black souls, which are the ones that only black soul gems and one other object that we will talk about here in a bit can be contained in, are those souls of sentient beings. So pre-Falmerized snow elves, Dwemer, and all the intelligent races that are playable, as well as other elven and human offshoot races. All of them, as well as almost assuredly, all the races from Akavir that we know of as sentient, would be able to be captured. They're soul trapped the exact same way through a spell or an enchantment. Sometimes, though, it is said that the spell to do it is a stronger version of a soul trap spell than the one that would put white souls into normal soul gems. There needs to be like a more powerful, more darker soul trap spell to get the soul to enter a black soul gem. And it's kind of a line in the Elder Scrolls where it's being seen as a bit of black magic, but still not. It's considered bad and not good, but it's not enough where like you'd be kicked out of the community. Now, black soul gems are also used in other rituals, and as soon as that happens, then it gets to be sometimes good and sometimes bad again, because black soul gems are used to, say, cure vampirism. In a ritual where a black soul gem is used to cure vampirism, even from a being as powerful as a vampire lord, it can cure them and make them back to being a normal individual. But in other rituals, they're used as basically a battery. And that's what most soul gems are used for anyway. They're used like batteries, but extremely powerful batteries because they're literally the essence of a being. They're their life force and soul energy being used as fuel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've noticed that in rituals, real rituals, of course, everybody's heard of looshing. That goes without saying. The negative energy that's pulled out of people. The Draco use humans as batteries. You see that concept in the Matrix a lot, where humans are used as batteries. But yeah, you can pull energy out of another person and trap it in a crystal or in an object, or you can even trap a person's soul in an object like a doll or something of that nature, and bind that soul to something and use that soul in a ritual. The most common one I have seen for bindings are crystal skulls, and they'll bind a soul into that and constantly use that being as an energy source, and put it on like a constant, how can I put it, a constant reconstitution or regenerating type of situation where that soul can be in like a perpetual loop of drained, recharge, drained, recharge. And that's a common thing that certain dark magicians and rituals use. They'll also take, of course, energy from other people, like energy vampires do. There's multiple types of vampires out there. The energy vampires, even the human type, will take the energy from the person. Sometimes they don't know it. Sometimes a sick person will take the person's soul energy too and not realize it. Or if the person's subconsciously doing something like they want to hold on to somebody, like say in a relationship or a family member or something like that, they'll pull that energy out. Or even a child that has the aptitude will do it mistakenly. But intentionally, I have actually seen binding rituals. I bound bad guys into crystals before. There is a specific ritual. You have to be very careful with your wording. You have to be very careful how you do it and where you do it and with what you do it. It is essentially you bind like a dark being, like say this goblin-like being that you're seeing in this picture. You see something like this. You're holding a crystal, like what he's doing, and you basically surround it in nails and in animal parts. Essentially, it is being lured in by the parts of the animal because of the energies on it. Say like a white soul, like something they feel they can prey on. But the energy residual is always on the bones or on whatever it is you're using. Pelts, whatever it is. It's usually bones that are the most widely used. And you have nails there to shred this being, or basically poke it and shred it as it goes into the crystal, and it's more weakened. Sometimes a lot of these times it's iron nails. That's said to weaken dark fairies and changelings and things of that nature. Of course, a lot of those stories were about greys and alien abduction, but I digress on that. But this is more like what I'm talking about here, where then that being is stuck in that crystal. Then you surround it in a red cloth, tie it up, and then you go bury it. I would recommend, if anybody is doing this that knows what the hell they're doing, and you have to be extremely OCD, anal retentive with your word language, or this could harm you. This is not for novices. And as you go along, you'll have a larger crystal to start with, and by the time you get to be better at it, it'll be a small one that you can do this with. it would basically be the equivalent from a grand soul gem to like a lesser type one. You could do this with that you could literally fold the binding down to such a tiny extent that you would need a crystal about say like the size of this piece of apatite I have here versus one that's like this big. And I've had to do this with beings on multiple occasions. I had to bind an Orion into one time and then bury it. The Earth usually takes care of a lot of that for you. I made them snake and knots surrounding it in red, and we were getting harassed by this being and messed with this by this being. We were driving down the road to go bury this. So the red cloth is very important. But it is the same type of ritual that you're seeing here. What you do is you do target the being that is being soul trapped, and just like with the bow and arrow, basically you're hitting with the arrow, and you're basically tagging this being for soul trap, very much like how the Orions would tag humans to go to their false heavens. It's the same technique where you tag the being, then you do the ritual, and it magnetizes and shreds them in and pulls them in. The animal bones are more like bait. They go from antlers, animal bones, skulls, teeth. The bones work the best. So you bring them all together. I usually put some amber in there to keep it cleansed as well. Silver, but I put the silver on afterwards to hold the being in as well. And there you have it right there. It is not a ritual for the faint of heart or novice. I do not recommend this at all. In an emergency situation, only if you know what you're doing. And you tag the being and they're drawn in. It's very much the same type technique that you're seeing right here in this image. But I would not recommend holding the crystal while like that man's doing at all. You put it inside of I would say wooden or metal bowl, and then do the ritual inside, or even in a jar, and do that ritual. Draw them in, and then seal it up and bury it. Witches' bottles and jars are pretty much the same, using rosemary, sage, and all this other stuff to cleanse the being as they're being stuck in the jar. But the most efficient form of binding is the one I just said. That is basically the closest to a soul trap or soul binding that you're going to see from the Elder Scrolls, is that ritual. So I hope everybody got that, but I would not recommend doing it, because you could do it to a human and bind them kind of almost like a lich to an object, or you could pull soul energy out. Now, in the case of vampires, certain vampire contagions will automatically kick the soul out of the body, and you have a soulless vampiric being. In some cases, the soul is bound to the body with a certain vampire contagion, with certain master vampires, but in lesser ones, the soul is basically ripped asunder out of the body, and the soul can reincarnate somewhere else while that original body is walking around. It's not common. Soulless beings are not common, like what eventually we will talk about here in a little bit. But that's where I'm at with this.
All right. So, what are souls? What do these batteries power? Well, enchantments. Now, enchantments are only one of the things they can power, but they're the most common. And basically, enchantment is the act of adding a magical effect or effects, if you're a master enchanter, because master enchanters can sometimes get two powerful magical effects or boons on a piece at one time. In Oblivion, it's done a little bit differently, but for the most part, it's basically one major magical effect, how strong you want it to be, and then you have to use the soul inside the soul gem as to give it the power. And depending on the type of soul used, it could be more powerful. So a giant is going to be stronger than a deer. And a human or an elf is going to be stronger than a giant because it's sentient. It meant more to kill that, basically. What is interesting is the initial soul used also gives it the initial charge of the object. Now, armor tends not to have charge, but weapons do. A charge to recharge the weapon, you would need to use more souls. In defensive things, they do wane over time in the lore, but in game, you'll never notice it.
Mhm. Like armor, like shields and everything. You never notice it in that. In the weapons, of course, yeah, the weapons get drained fairly quickly. But yeah, with armor and shields, I've never noticed it, or helmets or anything like that. Yeah.
Soul gems can also be used to enchant staves. And staff enchantment is done a bit differently because you can imbue a spell into the staff and then use the soul gem as the magical item being drained instead of your own magical stores. So essentially, you need to know the spell already, know how to cast it yourself physically. But then you can make the staff a summoning object for the spell and make it so the spell is not draining your magic when it's being used because it's the soul energy in the staff is the magical energy being consumed. So for a mage, this is a powerful tool to have, and staff enchanters just do it that way. And they generally are set up a bit differently. This is famously the one in Master Neloth's tower in Tel Mithryn on Solstheim. But essentially, this is another form of enchantment, but because it has more to do with the arcane, it still uses souls, and they're still charged like the same way. But and actually, a master staff enchanter, a master mage who is a staff enchanter can create a staff, and anybody could then use it. And some of the Daedric artifacts are in fact staves that have very powerful magical effects that cannot be replicated by people or have never been replicated by people because they use inherently Daedric magic as the spell that it's casting. Or they can, and it's just extremely dangerous magic. The other thing that these souls can be used for, and this is the only time it was ever used for, by the Dwemer, were to power their automatons, their robotic servants. Now, they have the military type, like the Dwemer Centurion here, which is clearly just a battle bot. They had Dwemer Ballista, which were like walking turrets for ballista bolts, which are just like thick arrows meant for siege warfare.
Mm-hmm.
But they also had the Dwemer Spheres, which can be used in warfare, but also as servants, and they had the Dwemer Spiders, which were almost certainly primarily a work bot, not a military thing, but then were used as that later and used as a defensive guarding thing as well. But the Dwemer are the only ones to ever use soul magic to power their thing, and that's why so many soul gems can usually be found on the remains of Dwemer automaton, because they're using that soul energy to power these items. And soul energy doesn't diminish over time like a battery would, just if it's there off. It only diminishes if it's being actively used. So these guys can slumber for 1,000 years, get activated because of motion and movement inside the Dwemer ruins, and then they turn on and go ballistic.
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of years after.
Oh yeah. I've seen that type of effect before, where it's just like how a computer motion sensor would act here. I have seen magic and spells and even quantum technology operate this way in haunted places. There was a cemetery I went to that was famous for lights in the cemetery. I came to find out there was some quantum holographic technology that was going on for when people would walk in, they would get a light show. But on the magical end of the spectrum, the real paranormal end of the spectrum, I have seen things activate because somebody's energy frequency was at a certain wavelength to activate it. That's how it is with people too. If you've done a lot of inner work and you've done a lot of empowering yourself, that can also transfer to other people. Same goes with the staff magic. If you have an imbued object, like you see in Doctor Strange, where they have the different imbued objects, like his cape or those boots, or like the chalice, or like the some of the weaponry and stuff like that. You can imbue them with a particular frequency and certain set of instruction too, with an enchantment spell. So yeah, that is absolutely possible to to do that, to where then that object will take the brunt of something, like what Mordo says in Doctor Strange, where that he said certain magics were too powerful to channel themselves, so they had to imbue objects with a particular type of magic or particular type of spell. That is absolutely true. And how that whatever that object is, it's whatever the frequency of that spell is. It's no different than a being in a different dimension trying to cross into ours from their physics to ours. They could look totally different the way they would be here. Their ships could look different, how it would look like within our physics. The show Farscape said it best when the character of Crichton encountered one of these ancient Guardian guys in it that were interdimensional. And one of them that took the form of his father in it. What happened was when he was in his actual form, he looked kind of weird, like a Muppet. So he said, "This is not how I look in my dimension, but in yours, your physics are different. And I look like this, and then I can just shapeshift into a more comfortable form for you, and using my own energy frequencies." In this, it's the same thing with the magic. A certain spell or certain set of parameters may have one form somewhere else in an energetic, but in a solid form, it would have to be in a certain encasing. The same thing within a soul. A soul has a certain shape. Now, I've seen people, also in there, some people jump on genetic lines as a certain soul because they prefer a certain shape, because their energy is of a certain shape. And I just call it soul shape or energy shape. And you see that person incarnated from form to form, and they look pretty much the same, or they'll jump along the same genetic lines. And I see that quite often. And so this follows those lines. Also, powering like an automaton, like these, you could easily power a robot or a computer with certain energies, and that's what this quantum AI does. From the Lushing that is done, the Orion's AI with the soul-sucking spheres, it's doing this exact same thing. The black goo is doing the same thing within these spheres and the soul trapping. It's empowering the technology, and humans are usually the adapters for this. Like they can't take it completely planetary. They have to get other humans to do the damage or do something creatively through a person as a puppet. I use the term meat puppet because that's what people have been becoming, is like a meat puppet to this, where a being from over here can't quite say walk on our surface, but they can have an intermediary like a spirit would have a medium. They would have a servant that would do these things for them, since their energy might be so totally incompatible with our realm that they need a go-between. And that's where I'm at with this. But that's I had to explain the whole thing out. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there was like a skip.
Oh, you're all good.
Yeah.
So, is there an alternative to souls for these objects? Technically speaking, there is. Now, these are alien Varla stones. There are also things called alien Welkid stones. Varla stones are a semi-translucent crystalline structure that the Allieds created, and they're powered by starlight energy, focused down through the Allied structures to essentially to empower these crystals that are usually on pedestals. Now, just like a white soul gem, when the charge in it's used, the gem itself shatters. Even a black soul gem, anytime these soul gems are used, the magical energy that was so powerful inside of them, once it's used, they break. And so with these, it does the same thing. But these, because they're not using souls, they take a while to charge. But they're an alternative that for pacifists and things. Now, the Allieds still used soul magic more. These were something that they created, and clearly they were important to the Allieds. But they were never the primary source of power. And they're just an alternative. And because the Allied civilization was overthrown when it never continued really. And the art of creating Varla stones, the art of harnessing starlight energy which in the Elder Scrolls is portals to Aetherius, portals to the magical where magic comes from. It's implied that some kind of liquid, when dropped into magical wells, create these, but we don't know anything more than that. And the interesting bit here is that it's an alternative, but it was so early in development that it was never, and before the group that was developing it was just overthrown, and then then they just didn't keep doing it. And finally they've assimilated into every other corner of Tamriel. They're not a thing anymore. They're a rare artifact that people find and they use, but they're not something currently in production. So they're a limited resource, and the secret may still exist somewhere on the Durrani Island if certain alien chieftain leadership integrated with the Durrani, but Durrani Island is famously quite closed to outsiders, so if they are being made there, we wouldn't know. But yeah, for the most part, the secret to making and using starlight energy is not there. Credits to the Sky Oblivion team for this picture because it's quite good.
Yeah, it's actually very decent. I've heard of this technique before, used on both sides, good and bad. The more famous thing that we've talked about that this type of technique is used on is energy collectors. Well, the ones I said are in historical sites, churches, cathedrals, like the one that me and Joanna encountered at the National Cathedral in D.C., where I said the aliens were using these foot spikes to grab the energy through, where Joanna had her foot hurt for a while and wondered what the hell happened, and I energetically found this triangular barb that was in there in her foot, the bottom of her foot. And that does happen because in the National Cathedral, you even see the imagery on the outside. There's images of the moon. There's images even of Darth Vader on the outside of it. And there's people with scrolls and contracts. They're basically telling you by walking in there, you're giving consent to have this taking place, walking on the floor. And it's built on a site that one of these energy collectors in a different frequency, in an undercroft in a different frequency, or a crypt is there. It's an octagonal shaft, very long octagonal shaft. There will be even one being sitting at the bottom of the shaft. There are crystals like these Varla stones that line even a small extent, even as small as, say, this piece of apatite here. They're lined like almost like an orgone piece, but a negative version of this. Well, they're lining the walls, and they capture sunlight, starlight, moonlight, and energies of people walking over the top. They have to see starlight. And people may ask, well, if there's a vampiric entity at the bottom, wouldn't this energy harm them? Yes, in its raw form. Very much like how electricity, if we touched a live wire, we would get electrocuted. You need an adapter. The shaft that they're sitting in is the adapter. And it converts, those stones convert the energy into something they can use. Something that's palatable to that particular type of vampiric being. Vampires been in there. They've even put other beings in there, such as giants and everything, to feed those crystals to jumpstart it. It's very much like how you said they take white souls, that are lesser and not sentient. They would do that, strap animals in there and everything. If they needed to power up one that was not jumpstarted correctly, let's just say, they'd strap another being in there, and they would jumpstart these crystals to get them going. It would kill the being in the process. It would feed the beast pretty much. Basically trying to jumpstart a car when a cold start, like if your engine won't start or something like that. They would do that, basically telling the overall AI, hey, stupid, you're supposed to be powering this. Now, if they didn't need one, they would shut that site down. I found out the city of Troy was basically that as well. This is why that archaeologist foolishly blew up Troy to get to the bottom. I found out there was one of those energy collectors there. I can't substantiate that. I've never been there, but this is what I'm basing off what I've been told in a different dimension. Well, the lowest layer of that was an energy collector, and I found out that's why that siege took place to begin with. That's why the different races were there. That's why the Myrmidon were present there with Achilles, because I found out that the descendant races of Tartaria essentially were, or basically what we would call Tartaria, were essentially trying to make siege on an active energy collector. Again, I can't substantiate that, but that's basically what I've been told. That the information hopefully holds. But these particular energy collectors, I've seen what the crystals look like that power these. It's also a crystalline form of not only like what I said before with dimensional fusions, but it's also crystalline forms of people. Think Soylent Green at this point, because what I say before about people being needed as an adapter or a go-between. You have people that their bodies are crystallized, and they can form those crystals by which they can basically channel another energy through it. So think kind of like a crystal version of Soylent Green at that point, where it's processed into that form. Now, the positive side is something like a Varla stone, where you just collect the energy, and you could use it to power a city. It's much safer than even 0 point energy, and you could literally claim it from the cosmos around it. It wouldn't drain anything. The problem with things like 0 point energy and with dimensional like batteries is they stretch across the multiverse, and they will grab bits and pieces from parallel universes, even causing like what you see in Multiverse of Madness incursions. And they will collapse sometimes whole universes just to get that power. A famous scene was from Stargate Atlantis ages ago, where they tried to power this large 0 point battery, and a parallel universe of the character of Rodney came in to stop them because it was going to collapse subspace or cause an incursion in his universe. So that's the problem with those types of batteries. Something like a Varla stone wouldn't do that. It would just kind of flow with everything in creation, and just that it's like with a river. You know, what happens if you put a bucket in the water? You've got water, or a bottle in the water, or a canteen. You got water. It's the same thing with something like a Varla stone. So that's why the Orions created a bastardized version of that to collect human soul energy by using something that was once part of a human. I know that's the gross side of this, but that's the two halves of the same coin here, essentially.
Yeah, and Varla stones are said to be raw power-wise the strongest option, but they're rare, so not many people get their hands on them.
Yeah, I find them all the time in the like Oblivion and such, and they even had the add-ons for Skyrim where they had a few of the Varla stones as well. But yeah, you don't find them that often unless you delve into the alien ruins. Yeah.
The darker side of the enchanted items are the Daedric artifacts. Artifacts said to be created by Daedric princes themselves, or forged for Daedric princes, or were items that Daedric princes have taken and empowered themselves. Like Volendrung here actually was a Dwemer Warchief's hammer, and then Malakath took it and corrupted it into his own Daedric artifact. But there are some that will either, in the process of using it and wearing it, make it so your soul never existed to the outside world, like the Grey Helm of the Grey Cowl of Nocturnal, the item used by the famous Grey Fox, leader of the Thieves Guild, during the events of Oblivion. The wearer of that item, they are forgotten. Their underneath identity is forgotten completely by everyone in existence. And they then just become the Grey Fox. And that is who they are until they can take it off. And the problem with that version of the Grey Fox was he was cursed and couldn't take it off, and you have to break the curse and then he can take it off. The Grey so that's one way soul magics are affected by these. Another one is that if you wear the item too long, it saps your own soul. Not all of them. Notably, usually it's stuff that Clavicus Vile gives out, like the mask, the helmet here, would be something that would do that. But it also, in the moment, makes it so you're more likable. Makes your person. It gives your powers in speech and charisma, and people view you as like the ultimate traitor and things. And some of these have the added bonus of if they're a weapon, they will kill. If you kill someone with it, the soul of that person goes to the Daedric prince that claims the weapon. The most two notable on this example are Mehrunes Dagon's Razor, where there's a small chance that it'll instantly kill someone. When it instantly kills somebody, their soul goes to Mehrunes Dagon. And the Mace of Molag Bal does soul trap for the user as only one of its effects. It will trap souls for the user in their own soul gems, but if they don't have soul gems that can actively take the souls go straight to Molag Bal. And Daedric artifacts don't have to be weapons or armor, but they generally are. A famous example of one of these is Azura's Star. All of these, except for Azura's Star, also are powered by soul gems and stuff as well, if they run low on charge and stuff. But Azura's Star / the Black Star, depending on if you corrupt it during a dark ritual, the Black Star basically just turns it into a black soul gem equivalent of Azura's Star, which basically is so it can take human and sentient race souls. It's implied that Azura will hate you for corrupting her artifact, but I mean, in game, there's no detracting benefit from doing it.
No retribution from her at all. Yeah.
It's not like you get targeted really, but the game wants to make you feel bad if you're going to do it for doing it. But basically, the cool thing about this is, like I said before, soul gems break when used. When the soul that was inside of them uses. This is a never-ending soul gem. Just like the skeleton key is a lockpick that can never be broken, or a key that can open any door, this is a soul gem that doesn't break after being used. It can be reused multiple times. For the aspiring mage, this is the ultimate. Well, for the inspiring enchanter or staff enchanter, this is an ultimate tool. Soul gems are a very expensive resource in the Elder Scrolls. Even filled ones sell for hundreds upon hundreds, sometimes thousands of septims. Empty soul gems, hundreds of septims as well, depending on the type of soul gem it is. This, being a soul gem that can be reused, is an ultimate resource for somebody that's interested in enchantment.
Oh yeah. Different artifacts like the weapons and this like I said, certain attributes are imbued upon them, and then of course they would go back to frequency-wise to their point of origin. Like if you killed someone with Molag Bal's mace, of course it would go to him because he created it. It would be his frequency value they would jump back to. With Azura's Star, that is actually quite interesting. It's almost like its own world within a world, because I saw it one time. Somebody did a video online where they said this is what Azura's Star looks like if you back out of the environment altogether. And ironically, it was a sphere. It was an orb. So it was the whole basically rendered environment was an orb. So I found that very fascinating. That it was that whole world where I believe Malin was inside. That wizard, the dark wizard that was in it, and he was treating it as his own realm of oblivion. So when he was inside of that, he was running the show essentially, and he could conjure through the whole environment. Yeah, this actually makes sense. And what also makes sense is that it's an 8-sided star, and there is a common, not a common, but there is a bit of information out there. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know something about a place called the Eighth Sphere. And again, it's like a world within a world, like with The Witcher and the conjunction of the spheres of different worlds that are in the different dimensional state. This one is supposedly one that is like the void dimension, like what we said in the Zero Sum and Kim episode, where it was essentially the basically unsolvable Rubik's Cube type of thing. I found out the Eighth Sphere is basically a manifestation of the void dimension. And this is where a lot of those dark beings come and go from. And it is very similar to the Soul Cairn, essentially, with the Ideal Masters. And essentially, some people would call that like hell. I would disagree with that. There really isn't a hell. This is more of a manifestation that the Orions created, like a layer of oblivion, or a world that they've cultivated dimensionally in some way, or in some cases it's holographic layers, like the layers of oblivion they did. They had the, like, essentially holographic worlds within worlds. This is how I categorize something like Azura's Star, like a passage to or go between for something like that. That's an unbreakable piece like that. I always use it in the game. I always go. That's one of the artifacts I go for first. After I've done a couple other things, I do the companions quest, and then I do that, so that I have that artifact. If you're doing soul trapping, which I would highly recommend in the game, uh, everybody commonly uses it. I would do the Azura Star thing first. But yeah, each one of those artifacts could be imbued frequency value in that way and always hold allegiance to its original creator. Now, there was something I saw in the He-Man universe one time where the character of Orko lost his wand one time. And he said, "Oh, this is like the center of my magic." What somebody was trying to say is basically, if somebody did that, they're not too smart if they base all their magic on a single object. I also saw in the show Smallville one time where Native American had a dagger that gave him the power of Superman, essentially. It's essentially the same difference where they can re-imbue the person with those particular sets of powers. Now, I personally feel that takes away from the person's true power and their true magic by basically saying all their power is an object like Orko's wand. I never have agreed with that, but I do agree with the fact it could be imbued with extra magic that somebody could use. Like in the whole DC universe with Shazam when they get turned into a godlike figure, and even Isaac's laughing that I'm actually using this as an example where it's transmutative magic, very much like almost like a vampire lord and a werewolf, where it's a certain set of parameters that can transform the person into a particular set of powers, like The Witcher with his mutagens. It's a certain set of magic as well. It's pretty much the same thing. But back on target, the Azura Star is probably the best example. Is like of a real good, like, non-weaponized go between, like, doorway to some of these other realms and other areas.
All right. Now, we need to talk about the darker side of using black souls. Black souls, being sentient beings, have an afterlife, but it's not an afterlife of choice. It's a forced afterlife existence in a place called the Soul Cairn, and this is the Soul Cairn. It resembles an eternal graveyard with mausoleum structures, towers, lightning storms of purple bolts of lightning just cracking through the sky, ominous gray purple skies with these strange Mesolithic style like headstones all over the place, wisps moving throughout, corrupted skeleton and figures and shades keeping the peace, and the souls of those put in black soul gems go here after their soul energy is used to power something. Famously, a character that has made an appearance in every last 3 of the main Elder Scrolls games, Jib, person that you first meet as soon as you wake up in Morrowind. You find his dead body in Oblivion, and he is here physically in Skyrim. This is a dimension that can not be escaped by those trapped there. Notably, Durnavir is a dragon that got trapped there because the Ideal Masters, the beings that control this realm, have taken a measure of his power away, and he can't leave unless he's summoned outside. When it comes to dragons and soul magic, there's shouts for it, but dragons' souls, being this eternal piece of time, means the only thing that can take their souls are another dragon. Little tangent, I'm sorry, but that has to do with the Dragonborn type thing, but that's really the extent of it. But yeah, the Soul Cairn is this dark realm, and it was created by these beings called the Ideal Masters. They were once necromancers, powerful necromancers. We talked about them a bit during the necromancy episode. They were so powerful that they carved out this realm of oblivion where they knew that they could do whatever they wanted without repercussions. They then, to become pure power, have encased themselves in a crystalline structure to collect energy. And this is how you see them if you're in the Soul Cairn. In fact, the only reason we know that this is them is there's a bit of lore from Battlespire that talks about the Ideal Masters and how they were trying to become in this form. And also, in Skyrim, when the DLC Dawnguard, which adds the Soul Cairn as a place you can go to into the game, first came out, there's a famous screenshot of a just black silhouette humanoid figure standing next to one of these. And then it was patched. And the people used a no-clip console command to go look. And if you go inside of one of these with the camera to look, those figures are in these. It's just a bit of cool lore, but somebody clearly, when they were putting on the model, didn't put the figure inside all the way so people saw it. And then it was brought up online and people were talking about it, and then when they patched the game the next time, the character was put back inside where it should have been. But the Ideal Masters, they control the realm, and they basically feed on this soul energy from the beings that are trapped in the realm.
And the fact that they've taken on that crystal form, it's very similar to what I said about the soul energy collectors themselves, very similarly laid out or very similarly functional. And I find it interesting that they were inside the crystal like that, where you said that people saw them inside of there. Just like with some of the orbs that fly around, there's beings inside of them. It's a dimension within a dimension, like the TARDIS on Doctor Who, where they can be miniature spaceships of beings flying around. They're not all bad. It's the common technology that's out there. But with this, that makes sense that they're inside of that crystalline structure. Now, with beings that want to become a concept like that, it's considered to be an abomination by people in the galactic community and elemental community. Because you come from elemental bases and you evolve into sentient being. To go backwards into a concept, is considered wrong. Like the Wild Hunt in The Witcher, where they wanted to become the embodiment of the freeze, for instance, or like Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe wanted to be the embodiment of like the balance of the universe, sort of the type of thing. It's not, or at least the cinematic universe. I want to be more specific, but with this, that actually makes sense to me that they've taken this form and they've carved out that little realm of their own. There are beings, like I said, that have carved out these holographic layers of oblivion or these worlds within worlds. It's actually both. There's holographic layers where there's at least 5 or 6 of those. Then you have all these dimensional worlds within worlds that are quite prolific, where they could be in completely different environments. That's also how this solar system was set up when Asgard was still a solid form before the Ragnarok. You had the worlds that were surrounding it, and you had all these dimensional spaces in between. When Asgard became a world that was around the Earth, it's like that too, where there are places like via Hyperborea, I found out, and via other inlets, you can go to Asgard where it sits now. You have Asgard, Midgard, and then Agartha. Then you have all these spaces in between where you have these alignments of all of these different spheres, and that's where you get that lore in The Witcher, essentially. Where then the gateways line up and let all the passages in between allow all of this stuff into our world, being Midgard, middle. So you have also aspects of the multiverse coming in. With this, this actually makes sense that they're in. I know I veered a little bit, but with this, the fact that souls are dumped here and then they can't get out. I've heard of soul traps like that where they cannot, where some souls can't get out unless you destroy or collapse that particular layer. Then they automatically go into spirit. Like, say if a Draco would suck some soul energy in it, or suck some souls in, or ghosts, or what have you, animal or human, or other alien, or what have you. When you cut the head off of that Draco, the nanocore that's in them that automatically sends that energy usually back to the Orion spheres and to those other soul traps when something is consumed by those Draco, just like the Merope, the Peruvian god of the underworld, ushered people to the afterlife. That's what he was doing, was consuming and sending them on to the Orion. What happens there is those souls are automatically released. Like if you were to smash a soul gem, you'd release those souls. And they go to the spirit world automatically where they're supposed to be. Babylon 5 also famously did the soul trap thing as well. Second episode, they had to do with the soul harvester guys that look kind of like Orions a little bit, where they would literally collect souls in orange spheres and put them like on a shelf somewhere to like enjoy them. Like, oh, there's no such thing as an afterlife, so we give you one. This is benevolent. Like, no, it isn't. You know, all the races in the Babylon 5 lore are terrified of these guys. They see them as like grim reapers or harbingers of doom. They tend to go after world leaders. They even assimilated or harvested an entire world they thought was dying, but these people were turning into energy and evolving. They trapped them in a gigantic sphere and put it in a repository, collective in their collection. So when the character of Delin cracks some of these spheres open, souls automatically go on to where they're supposed to go. And I find that interesting across all of these different mediums. It's the same message that's being said across the board about soul trapping and the soul trade.
Yeah, and getting in and out of the soul cairn has only been done by living beings once. And that is due to Valerica, the mother of Serana in the Dragonborn DLC, trying to hide herself and her Elder Scroll from her husband. She went to this other dimension by creating a portal in the basement of their castle, hiding where he would never look. And yeah, the Dragonborn actually has to like kind of let himself be semi-soul trapped or become a vampire to go in. You're not able to go in alive. So, and when you're in there with the semi-soul trap, you're actually weaker than you would be outside. And then once you get outside, they can end the semi-soul trap. Or once you're in there, you can kind of grab the energy of your soul, and then you're fine to go back and forth.
Mm.
But you're
that
not.
makes sense. The entanglement issue. Yeah, you would have to be tangled frequency-wise with a place like that in order to survive it. Kind of like putting a suit on or something like that to go underwater or something like that. Yeah.
So now we'll talk about other afterlife souls traps. First one is Hircine's hunting ground. Vampires and werebeasts with Hircine's disease of lycanthropy or other anthropies on them. They create werebeasts. When they die, they go and join Hircine in the eternal hunt in the afterlife. People who are cured can get out of doing that. It's very hard to get cured of not vampirism, but lycanthropy.
Yeah.
But they are trapped to do that. Now, it is implied through the Skyrim Companions quest line. It's not an instant thing. You can resist it as a ghost for a bit. And that's how you can cure Kodlak Whitemane, even though he's already died, so that he can go to Sovngarde, where he wants to spend the rest of his days, even though he should be going to the hunting ground. That's why you have to go famously get the Glenmoral Witch Heads to cure him of that. And in that realm, it's an eternal hunt. That's all that happens in that realm, with Hircine presiding over it. And sentient beings have been brought into Hircine's realm of oblivion and had to fight their way out against this unending horde of Hircine's followers in life. Nocturnal's another good example. Nocturnal, her agents on Nirn are called the Nightingales. The Nightingales, when they take the oath to become a Nightingale, pledge their souls to Nocturnal eternally, and thus serve her as her agents in the afterlife as well. It's implied that if you join in Skyrim, you kind of aren't forced to go, though, because the Dragonborn has special stuff attached to him. Like because he's kind of already a piece of... Because he's a dragon, essentially, there's no claim that a Daedric Prince can make on that soul, because he's time itself incarnate.
Essentially,
Molag Bal famously... Yeah, Molag Bal famously as well. He trades souls and uses soul energy all the time. That's one of the reasons why he wanted to pull Nirn and his realm together, so he could rule over every soul and just have his true final say of everything. Molag Bal is the Prince of Domination, so any way he can empower himself through domination, he will, and that includes soul magic. And of course, Sheogorath, where he'll just take the souls of crazy individuals and put them into his realm for his own enjoyment. Or he'll corrupt a person's soul over time to the point where they want to go to the Shivering Isles. In death or in life, and then they just stay there. But Sheogorath is... His isn't like... He's not using it as energy. He's doing it because it amuses him.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. There are some that'll do it just because they want to do it. Also, like if you were to corrupt somebody slowly over a period of time, you would get them to become exactly what you would need for your realm, like with Nocturnal or Molag Bal. They have their own specific frequencies and own specific agendas that they would need that soul for. Needed for in their realm for whatever their purpose was, and they would need it at a certain frequency or via contract or business contract, like Nocturnal. So it's essentially a soul contract somebody makes with a specific being, either through some kind of consent, behavioral alteration, or just the way they carry themselves in life. That's more co-synchronous with whatever that being's agenda is.
So famously, during Molag Bal's invasion of Tamriel during the Second Era, the worm cult killed individuals and sent their soul to Hull Harbor, as well as their soulless body. The Vestige, the player character during the Elder Scrolls Online, is one of these soul-shriven people, but they don't have any of the degradation, which is very rare. And it's because they were fated, basically, to be the hero of that game. Many of the other beings that this happened to become these soul-shriven, which are basically like zombies. But they're not zombies. They're not dead. The body never died, per se. The soul was just extracted. Some were killed and then reanimated. And the interesting thing is that there's different classifications of them. So it's implied that the willpower or the mental fortitude or some intrinsic quality of the individual before this process takes place can allow them to retain part of their consciousness. And this is seen because some of these are feral. Some of them retain who they are, like Sir Cadwell and the main character of the game. And other ones are like warrioristic drones that are just kind of like mindless warriors for the worm cult. The soul shriven are different than normal undead because they're not dead. They just don't have a soul in their body anymore. And famously, at the end of the Elder Scrolls Online, the souls are freed when Molag Bal is defeated. And for a time, they swirl throughout creation and then go back to their original host. But because you worked with Meridia to end Molag Bal, she kind of like grabs your soul, like pinches it and brings it to you, and like you can get it back, like on the spot.
That's interesting because that's actually also a true concept where there's a couple things going on where you can have the vampire contagion for a couple of vampire contagions out there, like Soul Ren someone so where it can be the driving force for the body, and that person becomes psychotic. Or I've seen people have their souls, not just their light body. I've seen people have their souls themselves removed from a body, and that body becomes extremely psychotic, narcissistic, and just this sociopathic, psychopathic type that there's no light there at all. Some synthetic beings are like that, but some synthetic beings also have a soul trapped within them, like synths, like in Fallout 4. But there are some real ones that are soulless and also have a soul that's bound into them as well. Say if the Cabal wanted to punish somebody, like famously that like some of the politicians, I won't rattle off the names on here, but some of the politicians have been turned into the synthetic. But there's also some soulless beings as far as this type goes that are like this, that are warrior-like, and there's some that are like the other type as well. That there's true monsters out there like that. Also, some vampire lords that are Nosferatu types that don't have souls. The virus contagion itself is the powering force from the frequency value it's anchored to wherever the Orions are anchoring that energy from. It's one of these other worlds. I know it is like with The Witcher, they show the vampires come from one of the other worlds. I feel it is on a similar thread to that, to where it's anchoring to one of those worlds energetically, like kind of like it's basically a meat puppet, essentially. So Isaac laughs every time I use the term meat puppet, but okay. But anyway, he laughs at everything like that. But anyway, that's kind of what the thread I'm getting on. These things do exist out there, folks, but it's the lines are slightly more blurred than this, but they do exist. My mother, actually, a friend of hers, came across on a military base one time a man that did not have a soul at all. They don't. It was a complete mystery as to what happened to this person, whether he was soul rended, what happened on the base, whatever experiment somebody was running on this person. They took the soul out, and this person eventually, I think he was killed famously after this. But I also ran into another person, a session of mine from many years ago. One of the first sessions I ever did, actually, was where this person's teenage son all of a sudden became psychotic, and she was afraid of this person. The mother was afraid of this teenager. And I looked at this person. He had no soul light at all. I figured maybe he was possessed. No, what had happened was it was a reptilian, like big orange demon type. Big, like I call them berserker types. Had rendered the soul out, had consumed him, or tried to, and the soul then got separated and ran off somewhere, and I got the soul back to that body. This was afraid. The soul was afraid of what was going to happen. It happened so quickly that there was this weird mismatch that took place, and I said, "No, you need to get back over here because something bad could happen over here." I managed to fix it and lock the soul back in, but that can happen, and also light bodies can be abducted. Aliens do this all the time. They'll do it through the dream state, abduct your light body and take you somewhere. Also, good beings will take your light body and add codes to it. Like if you have an injury, add codes to it. And then you bring those codes back to your physical body. That frequency value then tells the body to take a particular shape if you want something healed. I've heard of that. I've heard both the negative and the positive sides of this. I've noticed in some alien abductions where people are walking around naked, let's say, that means their light body is actually there. Sometimes physically, of course. I've seen the other where they just have people hanging around naked and talking and doing things. But as per a light body being taken, I've seen that where somebody is roaming around in like a trap. And as far as the soul trade goes, this is something that is so prolific out there that people would be absolutely horrified and mortified as to how big the soul trade actually is. And this is something that would actually has to be stopped. You have aliens putting ghosts and souls in like a quantum box type of thing, and then trading them to other aliens that take them back to their homeworlds and put them in their own incarnation cycles for whatever purposes, from doctor to warrior to scientist, whatever. And this is how I discovered some ghosts that I saw lined up against headstones at Forest Home Cemetery in Illinois, where they all were lined up like almost like meat, like a meat market. and these aliens would go through there, and basically the angel that these ghosts said they needed to stay there was basically the one selling or basically displaying these for trade. And that's one of my first introductions to the soul trade. This is a real thing that goes on. There's also frequency trading out there that takes place, where they take copies of your frequency codes and will put them on like a black market. There's a little set of like Jawa like beings that do that. I don't know the name of these beings. They put these devices and people that collect these cube looking things that collect the soul, is like the frequency codes. That's virtually harmless, but it still leaves you open for other things to hit you. The other dangerous thing is the ghost and soul trade. That's where people are basically, when they leave to go to the afterlife, something grabs them and takes them, puts them in a device, or they follow a light tunnel to a much larger Orion soul trap. Neither is acceptable. So you just have to go your own way and go to spirit. But I know that was kind of a long way to the end of this, but that's the kind of things that are going on in reality that reflect what, or this reflects what is actually happening in the background in some areas.
The last bit of soul magic that we have to talk about today. Now, this picture is not from an Elder Scrolls piece of media. It's from Star Wars, where the same kind of concept exists. It's called essence transfer or consciousness transfer. And basically, through arcane means, one takes their soul and inserts it into another living being so that they are then in control of that being. They then have that body. It's like body jumping. Like Orochimaru tries to do in Naruto, like a lot of characters try doing in different forms of media. Famously, it's going to be tried to attempt to happen in Morrowind by a Talvani wizard that's been having an incestuous relationship with his daughter. If you bring the plot that he plans to take his daughter's body once she is pregnant with his incest baby, so that eventually he has another being that he can do it to in the future, that's then would be both like him. He would do this to her. It's unclear in the Elder Scrolls if her consciousness goes the other way or if his consciousness just kind of overlaps over hers and his soul like overlaps over hers in there. It's not clear what happens to her soul. It might be consumed in the magical process. It might go to the other body. We just don't know because it's never fully been talked about, because you stop it from happening in the game by, I think you can, I don't remember if there's an option to help him do it, because I've never played the quest. I've just heard about it. But it is something I've heard about. And essentially, yeah, he wants to do this.
Yeah, that I've heard of things like that. Now this goes over to this also goes to the Secret Space Program's body transfer tech. Now, some people have asked me, how are they able to do this? This violates natural law, all this other stuff. You're absolutely right. What they do is they, like in the Secret Space Program, they will make a clone of yourself or whatever they want to transfer you to. Usually it's a clone of yourself. They take the soul out through dominant eye, which with me it's the left eye. And what they did is they inserted a golden needle right here, extract the consciousness, put it in a quantum sphere or a cube of some time the same as the type that they use for the soul trade. And or a being is sitting at the center of a cube that they steal energy out of people's feet with. It's the same type of technology. There's like a small being in the center, kind of like the Ideal Masters in their crystal. And they take them to a base, whereas then they transfer them over to another body. Now, there's a variety of different techniques or different pieces of technology that can accomplish this. The one that I personally interacted with was, there were these large tubes like you'd see in a sci-fi movie. It was like bubbling, like blue water liquid that's in them, bluish, like kind of like the light blue, like this pen here. It's like sky blue, like ish. And almost like kind of like the barber comb liquid or windshield wiper fluid or something. Well, there they would put a body in one, and also you can use these tubes to clone as well. And this liquid, this amniotic liquid, the other person sits in the other. They put they open the tube up, put the they fold open kind of like this and fold closed, and then they fill the tube with the liquid, and also there's some liquid oxygen in there so they can breathe. Well, and sometimes they have a mask put over them for breathing as well. And then there is a small box in between, like a cube in between them. In the center of the room, or another part of the room, there's a giant version of this cube, and there's a room full of these tubes. And you can transfer the soul to any number of whatever the tube is in the room. Like if you have like tube X over here and tube like B over here, you can tell an AI to transfer to whatever. But it was laid out in like the big boxes over here, tubes along here, and there was some in the center with a walkway on the side and door here. Well, it's underneath. There's a giant nuclear reactor that's powering the whole thing, and it's in a heavy water containment chamber underneath with a grated metal floor. And what happens is when they tell the body to transfer, in the center of this cube would be something like a soul crystal. It's essentially the same technology that Orions were using through the crystalline structure. Same identical thing. The quantum computing unit is using the same identical thing as its power source. So kind of like a tesseract, or like what the Numidium was as a tesseract inside of the big mech or robot that would take on soul energy to power itself. It's the same identical thing. Then you transfer through this tube, through this cube rather. It's cleansed. The codes are I want to say cleansed, and then or reallocated in a particular pattern for that other body, and then transferred over. That other body may have absolutely no memory of what this other one has. Zero. And then programmed with a certain set of parameters, like when they put me in the female body, I had no memory of this life. Zero. Tony Rodriguez spoke about this when he was put on Mars. He had no memory of his life here. Same thing until that insectoid that cut his arm off sensed where he actually was entangled to and came from. Same thing happened with myself. The reason I include the secret space program in this conversation, and it seems like it has no place in this, but it does, because it's the same identical technique as what we're describing here. And also consciousness transfer. Can you do this without technology? Yes. Through like the Force and swap like this? Absolutely. In, I believe, was it Star Trek Discovery, or was it Strange New Worlds, actually? Oh, they showed T'Pring and Spock actually were in the middle of a mind meld, and they got spooked for some reason, and they went, and they swapped bodies temporarily, and they had to sit and actually figure out how to switch themselves back. There was like this sudden jolt, and their frequencies swapped. They also famously, one of the most famous Star Trek episodes of the old series of all time was one called Turnabout Intruder, where a woman actually hates Captain Kirk, wants to see him fail in his career, and wants to get back at him for God knows what, and finds this alien piece of technology, this wall that had all these glyphs and symbols on it. It was technology and magic put together. And she tricks him, sticks him to this wall, gets on there and swaps his body out and tries to ruin his career after that. And then Spock finds it out through a mind meld. But the other one with the mind meld was not a technological one. It was a magical one. And it was energy frequencies that were melded for a period. And it just went further in and then inverted and went into the other bodies or swap places. You can actually do that. Stargate SG-1 made this famous too, but this was more technological. There was an inventor in it by the name of Michello that had this device that when the SG team touched it, they started swapping bodies, but there was a program protocol that wouldn't let them swap back. Michello was trying to find a new body for himself because he was incredibly old, and he wanted to find a younger body so he could continue to fight the Goa'uld, the main enemy in the series, for a while. And he wasn't allowed to do it because he took one of the SG team's bodies. He was saved his consciousness in this device, and he took the character of Daniel Jackson's body temporarily to be able to continue his work. And then he realized it's wrong. It was wrong what he did, and they stop him after that. But that's the point I'm making. It can be done through technological means, magical means, but it's the same type of energy and frequency swapping either way. And I know that was again a long roundabout way of talking about it. I know there's other body switching techniques, but it's all the same. If people want to see the rest of that, just go to the liftings episode about transgenderisms and the body switching tech. Then it goes into more detail there, and we do it on our paid subscriptions on like galacticinterstellar.council.com and all those places too. But that is where I'm at with this. This is actually a great image to use. I know it's Star Wars related, and yes, through the energy force, yes, can you do that? Absolutely. But that is a form of soul trapping in its own right.
Yeah, I think this comes from maybe the Book of the Sith book, one of the two, where it talks about like deeper force abilities and how they work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
that's interesting. Yeah, like the Jedi would never do something like it. It would have to be the Sith that would have.
No, yeah, this is like a Sith technique that's like so you can keep going on.
Mm-hmm.
And famously, it's used by Palpatine in the post Episode 6 era.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's actually quite interesting. Also, I'm laughing when Isaac's reminding me there was an episode of Rick and Morty as well where Rick was jumping into different people, parallel universe versions of himself in like a dimensional space too.
Oh yes, there was, yeah. And there's also a Rick and Morty episode where he uses an entire dimension as a battery. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they have the disclosure in that series as well. So that I find that very, very interesting. They have secret space program stuff in there. They have all this soul trapping everything in there. But then we won't get into that part. But
it gets really funny though because then he goes into his dimension is not producing as much energy for him anymore because he gave him a machine, right? And he's like, yeah, you guys got to do this, and it'll give you power. And so it created them power, and then he's siphoning off the top what he needs, like the majority of it, and. Suddenly it stops working because this other guy did basically the exact same thing that he did. He made a dimension inside of his Rick's dimension and was doing it to a population in that other dimension that this guy had created. And Rick's like, well, no. And so then Rick basically gets Rick and Morty get the other dimension scientist to kill himself. And then, yeah, it gets bad, but the Rick gets his machine back.
Yeah, that's interesting how they've incorporated it into that series. I did not know about that specific one. I knew about the parallel universe one. I didn't know about the other one, but that's very interesting how they've incorporated that, like it's layer within layer, where one was just harvesting off another population, another dimension, and that's also true how that operates as well within the worlds within worlds. So, and dimensions within dimensions. So, I'm thinking, yeah, we're at the spot where we can. Incorporated Galactic into the conversation. Now I'm trying to see who. Vesta has been here every now and again. She'll roll her eyes, if something comes up. They do it playfully, but are you the one speaking today, or is it Isaac, or who else? Because I know there's a lot of energies interested in the conversation. So. Sometimes I don't always know who's going to talk because I'm always sensing a lot of eyes on the conversation, a lot of ears on the conversation. So there's elementals interested. We even have trees in our new backyard here that have consciousnesses that hum, and when the dryads are listening too. So they have this like almost like a weird like undulating like tone, and it's that you always know when it moves a little faster or it undulates more that they're listening in some fashion. So like if one of us leaned in closer to listen to something, like we leaned in our ear closer to listen to something, it's kind of the same way. And trees hum on a particular tone like that too. So you're talking today? Yes. Okay. Where'd you come from exactly? Okay. From the workshop? Really? Yeah. My workshop's in a garage off that direction. I have a variety of different pieces in there at the moment. So I can't show the image on the show that I got done of them, but they use that as an edifice. The painting is not here; it's in Arizona at the moment. But I have a copy on a computer, but I cannot show that for the YouTube audience. But So with that, ooh, you are coming in strong here. So coming in hot here. So let's see. All right. A lot of dry mouth today. With the energies are they're slightly wonky, but they're peaceful. But there's something going on here.
Hmm.
So okay. I also had to use a new crystal as a channel crystal. This one here,
Mm,
because that's another thing. I do the channeling, to cut down on the effects on myself
yeah.
because uh, they channel through, then channel through me. Isaac would argue that that's channeling through the crystal is actually more minimal than I give it credit for, but it's actually making it prolonging it so I can go longer. And so it's a frequency that I've put a little node of some sort in the crystal, like a little energy like bead where they go through and it elongates that energy to at a slower pace to where my brain can handle it. Just like with the oversoul, some people have three components, some people have two, where you have the oversoul library. I have Torrent Kal, who's a manifestation of that soul library. Then I have myself. So it's like an electrical plant, electrical substation house. So that's kind of what the crystal does for me, channeling the information.
Okay,
So
that makes sense.
yeah. So many people have asked me that, so I figured it was appropriate to the conversation. So uh, okay, yes, I know. I'm hurrying. Thank you. All right. Yes, it is. That's it. Elena is also here with me. Yes, Isaac is out in his little skull contraption outside, kind of like a homeless person living in the garbage can. So this, yeah, he's laughing at that. Also, more like Oscar the Grouch. But in this respect, I will digress. Well, this particular subject is fascinating. This is 100% doable and possible, and has been done. Unfortunately, not only within the soul trade, but some people don't always realize they're doing it. Some people have also bought objects such as dolls, crystals, skulls, and the like that have consciousnesses trapped in this. He has done this on multiple occasions where there has been a skull that has had something trapped in it. An element of Isaac was stuck in the one that he obtained originally and made copies thereof. Even the mold of it therein does have its own lingering effects, let's just say. But skulls have a funny way of becoming traps. Even Shungite ones, I might add, because think of it this way: he described it as a crack within a skull. If it's broken in some way, Shungite grabs it, traps it, or if it's made of amber and amber mixes, of course, this can trap. And at that point, you have to destroy it and release it. The most you would have to do is take a chisel, a hammer, or an axe and break it open at that point to cut down the size depending on what's in it, like your soul gems, black soul gems to regular ones, depending on like human or animal. And this happens far off more often than you think. Crystal skulls are used quite often in rituals for this purpose. Years ago, he remembers the soul of a being named Cameron that was trapped in a smoky quartz skull and had happened to him in a satanic ritual. Was this being bad? It's debatable from moment to moment. He no longer occupies the space with Chris here, but uh, this does happen to beings, even beings like ourselves, even us Saranans like yourselves, have had very much soul rending taken place in rituals by people who think we're etheric beings and not physical ones, you see. So this can happen where you can anchor a soul into an object very much like a lich. This is something that does take place. But back to also edifices. Yes, an edifice can be used as a focal point, but it can just as easily be corrupted. Now, is Shungite corruptible and silver corruptible? No, it is not. What he makes his products out of. But a broken piece, a skull specifically, then could trap something, not be corrupted. but could encase like a cage. Very much like he had a fairy statue he meant for us to speak through. But since it broke, it had an inlet, things with faces. This is something that must be careful of. Any other device is pretty much what it's designed for. It's anything with a face. Dolls, the same thing. Paintings, yes, the same thing. But as long as you imbue them with the proper set of frequency coding that makes it so only a specific being, benevolent, or whatever you're aiming for, goes through it. This is what also can determine an object, good or evil, in worth. This is this is also what is common in some of your ritualistic religions, such as witchcraft and the like. This is where I can go into questions if you like.
Okay. I guess the first real question that we would have to deal with today is, I think people need to know a bit more about the off-planet soul trade.
Yes,
It's
this is
not a
something.
topic that gets brought up a lot.
Yes, this is unfortunate in its design. This is what takes place. You see, the Earth is more like the Wild Wild West when it comes to pretty much anything, and it's not under any sort of you would think it was under the Galactic Federation's purview or your Cabal's purview, but you'd be mistaken in just that dualistic way of thinking. It is more or less divided up into fluctuating territories. Very much like your moon is dominated by your Martian Germans and some of your American groups, but there are also reptilian other alien groups that also claim it. Mars, it's essentially kind of the same. You have the Martian Germans that dominate, but there are a variety of other beings that are there. You have Venus, which is the Venusian colonies that dominated. But then you have other beings that also come and go and also claim spots and rent spots, essentially, you would call it. But with the soul trade, this is the process by which this happens. Say you have a body. Say you have a graveyard that that body is in. Say you have the frequency coding and water molecule coding that is on said body. Would that not also equate to energy? Yes. This would also entangle what you would call a ghost. Yes, a ghost forms of injustice, lies, as he says, murder, unfinished business. But there is one thing he neglected to say, and is the main proponent within the soul trade, the very main proponent. He did not put two and two together until recently. The residual energetics and water that is molecules that is on the remains is a form of a curse that the one you know of as Enlil put on bodies ages ago when he helped create the process by which bodies are buried. This, where people now go along with it. Cremation would end this here and now. Completely, the soul trade would be gone with cremation because of the fact that the body still has a frequency anchoring. The ghost wanders the graveyard, but can still move on. And the spirit world can sever that entanglement very easily. But if a being, such as an angel, or let's just say a really horrible business person, comes into the graveyard, finds these entanglements, starts, as you would say, pinging the frequency of that entanglement, very much like you would bang a bell or a gong, or ringing a bell or an alarm. This then would then summon that ghost back to the spot, aligning them with that specific gravestone with their name, with the power in a name, entanglement, and date of birth and death, which shows vintage. Vintage at that point then denotes what the soul traders can use that specific ghost for. That and those bodies, if they were destroyed and interred properly, ash-wise, and with no water attached, the curse would be broken then and now. But since Enlil wanted the soul trade to begin with, since also he hearkens to another name, Loki and Lucifer, you see, or Saturn, hence Soul Trap, Saturn, Satan. This that's not doesn't mean there's one devil to rule them all. That's ridiculous. He's one of dozens. This made it so that others made it easier for them to grab souls for their own biospheres. So they take a ghost, put them in a cube. They have caravan guards, which you know of as the Lancaneers or a warrior elf type, very much almost like your Thalmor or Alien look.
Okay.
They they carry the souls, groupings of them, to like say if it's a mailman delivering mail somewhere with a certain label and a certain the return address will be where they got it from. The address is where it's going. They take it to another repository, then takes it out into space and delivers the mail to whomever ordered that particular ghost. Very much like you order something on Amazon or any
Mhm.
other delivery sites. This is essentially, in a nutshell, how the soul trade operates.
And what about the races that are purchasing these souls? Do they get repercussions for it?
Yeah, yes and no. As for repercussions, there are really virtually no consequences for the soul trade. There are no laws governing this for the most part because it's an acceptable practice. Very much like you have countries on your planet that eat a particular animal that, say, Americans wouldn't want to, like, say, dogs or cats, for instance, or say if cannibalism was acceptable somewhere and it definitely isn't anywhere else. It's essentially like that. It's considered a part of a cultural type of thing that needs to go. Once a soul goes to where it's going, that ghost then is incorporated into that particular planet's incarnation cycle, or more specifically, to whatever the buyer wishes that soul to then become. Say, if they cloned a body that they need for a servant, for instance, doctor, scientist, warrior, whatever, they can force incarnate in a soul trap in a very similar process with like a gem, very similar to the soul trapping or how the ideal masters do it, or however grounding them to a particular like dimensional state. They can also take that soul in that quantum box, put it into a body transfer device, and put that soul in that body. Therefore, they have a servant, warrior, scientist, whatever that energy is aligned to. Just like in your Babylon 5 series, where particular races had certain soul nets that were more conducive to their worlds, but then as the races started to meet each other in space, those started to get the lines started to get blurred. This forcibly blurs those lines, and that person could then incarnate as a being on that world that thinks they've always been a part of that world because they can type out a script or narrative to put in that clone's brain, the same as they do in the secret space program. It's the same technique that was learned by humans from some of these different races for the same purposes.
Okay. And do we like so a being that's are there groups out there that go and try to retrieve these souls?
Unfortunately, very few. There are some that are considered rogues out there, like you have on Earth right now. Anybody that is considered more of a critical thinker, somebody that looks into things more, is considered a rogue or a pain in the ass. This is the same as out there. If somebody tries to stop this, it's just like the slave trade was several centuries ago. It was incorporated into the economy. And if anybody tried to stop it, it was considered to be a disruption to the overall economy. Say the forebears of the United States, they spouted freedom yet still kept slaves. It is because of the economy of the period. Think of the soul trade as very much the same in the same breath or the same flavoring or thread.
Okay, so this is viewed as a financial transaction. There's no care for what is being transacted.
You are correct. This is exactly the way your slave trade was on Earth. And there is a physical slave trade out there as well, like depicted in your Star Trek with the Orion slave trade and other things where people are abducted by Draco and other beings and physically traded. Then you have the soul trade that is more of the energetic side.
All right, that makes sense. Um, how would one defend themselves against getting incorporated into a soul trade situation?
Knowledge of it, you're 50% there already. The other part of this is not to be be afraid or go into it with fear. For any of the soul trap type of things, from fake heavens to pirates that actually will literally steal someone's life body from them while they're alive, or soul while they're alive, by throwing an energy net over them and grabbing them. Any of these things. Fear is your enemy in this particular way. Critical thinking, grounding yourself, keeping yourself grounded at all times. But when you do eventually pass on, it is going to the right of the light. You see, the tunnel the light tunnel is a hack, or not a hack, but is basically like a Wi-Fi almost pathway that the AI, God, if you want to call it that, takes people into these fake heavens. Other races can hack that tunnel and pull the bricks, let's just say, and mortar out of place by grabbing those souls and hacking their way in there. Many have attempted this, and the Orions have basically caught them virtually almost every time, but some have gotten crafty and hacked their way into us, like hacking a government mainframe. Let's say if somebody tried to hack the CIA or FBI or something. This is essentially the same. What you do is you envision yourself going to the right of the light and knowing that crossing into the next room, you're in spirit. Now, in life, again, do not be afraid of that process. Even though it is a fake, abominous type process, it is a horrible thing. Just know that know in your own life you will never be part of it. Now, not knowing about it, being in blissful ignorance, is wrong too, because of the fact that you would automatically go to the light, or go to or accept what you know of as last rites. Last rites is completely intrinsic to this process, by which then that person has given consent to the last rites. What this does is, and he's explained this too, but whereas you are giving permission to basically a last moment, there is no such thing as a last moment. As he said, life is eternal and continually evolves and moves on and moves forward. This tries to cut you off from access to your oversoul and true benevolent spirit, and then takes you to a false heaven or a trap, or wherever these beings want to take you. This is how, unfortunately, this process operates. But like I said, fear is your enemy in this. Of course, it's natural to be spooked by something like this. Fear is your enemy of this. Don't always believe like, oh, I'm afraid this will happen. No. Some beings see that as a form of consent. Even though there are beings that violate that on a regular basis, they do not care about consent. So that is a New Age misnomer or metaphysical misnomer. But with certain policies, as far as the soul trade goes, they require it. So therefore, being afraid that you're going to end up there is a surefire way to end up there.
And regardless of, so basically just be vigilant, and you can keep yourself from falling into these things.
Yes, right. And also all the physical pitfalls of don't take candy from strangers in dream time, things of that nature, because you could get hooked to that. Same as if somebody would land in a spaceship. They're not mystical. Think of them as some stranger in a creepy van on your corner trying to abduct children. Think of that stranger danger type of thing. Don't go with that physically just because they're in a new and unusual spaceship with technology you've never seen. Don't go along with it. Fight every time somebody tries to abduct you, be it your military or alien. Be the biggest pain in the ass you can be, because you don't know what they're going to do. You might end up being a missing person if you don't. And also, don't be afraid that these things are going to happen, because you'll end up co-creating them. You should be fine avoiding these things. Knowing about them is crucial, because that's 50% there. The other 50% is on you at that point.
All right. Soul traps in general, is there a way for someone in them to break out?
Yes, absolutely. So, also knowing that you're in one, that something isn't quite right. That 50% there. Resisting the flow of the illusion, like say in your Matrix movies, when somebody saw reality wasn't quite right. And that was a form of soul trap in and of itself. Knowing that something wasn't quite right and thinking your way out of it. Also, then energetically you start to build a certain resistance to it, to the point where you've soured the milk enough for the Orions or whomever has you to forcibly make yourself get set free. From that point, you go to spirit. unequivocally at that point. Like that'd be the same as if you cracked open an egg and you get the yolk out. You can't break an egg. So once you've
Mhm.
broken a soul trap egg open, the souls come flying out, just like in that Babylon 5 reference he made.
Okay, cool. I think that's all the questions I have today because this is a topic that's kind of hard to wrap your brain around.
Yes, unfortunately, we have seen it a number of times. It is again no different than your slave trade was back in your colonialistic time frame, and still continues to go on other parts of your planet. And it's heartbreaking to see, but eventually it will eventually have to implode along with the soul trade. But can one man or one woman change this? Yes, by again changing the frequency and basically saying, "You don't want this." But you want change, and it begins to shatter and collapse that system. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and no wonder there was a wonky energy. Somebody didn't want some more stuff about that told. The thing about the gravestones, I knew about the vintage of the gravestones. I didn't know about the return address portion of it. Uh,
Mm,
and there is a story that's out there that I heard, and I've talked about it before, but this also has to do with that consent issue as well. Even though it is a misnomer that it's an all-encompassing, oh, I do not consent. Some beings will go so, but in they'll just say, oh, you just resisted, we're more powerful, blah blah blah. They would just say that. In this one event where there was this episode, I believe it was an episode of Expedition Unknown that we were watching one time that had to do with death, and this woman said to Josh Gates, she said that her son had passed away. And what had happened was, and just know I'm not laying judgment or blame or anything. I'm just explaining a process here. This woman, when her son was born, I believe, these beings came to her and said her son would die on his 18th birthday or then around,
hmm
and she acknowledged this, but it never left her. Of course, it wouldn't. Somebody that would have that rolling around
Yeah,
in their head for
that's
a
just like
long
a
time.
natural thing to keep
Yeah,
holding on to. Yeah.
yeah, keep holding on to it. Well, when you roll around something in your head for a while, you start to manifest it. If it's in the subconscious and it's rolling around, you start to form it in your world after a while. When her son was 18, she told him one of the worst decisions you can make, because told him, he acknowledged with, but it could have been a nod. He would have went, okay, yeah. He could have just done that, and even
Yeah.
not even taken it seriously. He could have verbalized or nodded. This is all those soul traders needed as a form of consent, and with this, that you can't be a pain in the ass to them. You have to go willingly, even in a form of acknowledgement or calmly, because if you're starting to fluctuate your frequency too much, they can't hold you. Like in a cage, they can't hold you down.
hmm
So that's why in a soul trap, they were saying, be a pain in the ass there and you'll burst the egg open.
Yeah.
Once you do that, it's completely broken at that point. The same goes with military and alien abductions. Be a big whiny pain in the ass. Be an immature pain in the ass to them. They have a time frame in which they can do things, and you break that timetable, and you're gonna be fine. But with this, then he died shortly thereafter, and I can guarantee you those guys did what we explained through the episode. Those were predators
Yeah.
that told her that. And this, we saw that, and I knew exactly what happened when I saw her talking about this, and I feel sorry for that person. I believe this person's in spirit now, but at that point, he probably ended up in a different place in his own incarnation, Oversoul's history. I feel he's in spirit now, but more than likely, the Oversoul wanted to experience something there to undo it, like change the coding or harmonics around it somehow, and more than
Yeah.
likely, we consented to that for that reason. But yeah, this is how that goes. And to put context to what Vesa was saying with the tunnel, there was an incident right after a friend of my father's passed away, uh, that I was helping this person to the other side. And at this time in my life, I did not know about any of this what we've been talking about. this is when I call this being the blonde-haired idiot for reasons I don't want to use his name because he was supposedly a guide of mine. I found it was an Orion soul heart.
I know which band you're speaking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was watching this person pass to the through the tunnel, and this blonde-haired idiot came in and trying to direct this person to the afterlife or supposed afterlife, the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, I see this other being coming in this tunnel that looked like it had bricks, like a brick road that kind of came up like this, and and one of these bricks pushed forward, and a being came crawling through there. And this being was wearing a looked like a Galactic Federation uniform ish, or some kind of like trader type of uniform or something. But this guy's head was weird. He looked like an amoeba, and all I saw were like weird star patterns. This just told me being was either not a physical being or had some other weird physiology, like you see in the movie Quantum Mania, where all these beings had weird physiologies and everything, or this person was using a computer to hack the light tube, essentially, or this Wi-Fi like signal is essentially what it is, and that my brain was decoding it as bricks, and like almost like macro blocks or shifting bricks. Well, this being basically came up to me and says, "Oh, I'm his guide. I'll take him." I'm like hell you are. You have no soul light. And essentially, that was a synthetic or a hologram that was being worn by whomever was hacking the tunnel at the time, or a different being with a different weird physiology, or all the above. But this particular being tried to take him. I pushed the being aside and got rid of him and put the brick back in place. What blonde-haired idiot did was take this person to the other side, and eventually I freed him from a soul trap much later in life when I found out what happened. Uh, this guy went with he'd committed suicide, and he was in a really despondent, ghostly state, and he basically called this guy Angel. And blonde-haired idiot, he saw him as like an angel, but we know those are Orion. So the point is, somebody tried to hack the signal and grab the soul out of it, walking through the tunnel, and didn't expect me to actually be there. Didn't expect the living human there with a beating heart to be looking at it, because that's generally not what happens. But these other pirates essentially will try to grab them for their own purposes, so they don't have to purchase anything. Just like if somebody robbed a convenience store or a bank. It's the same difference to them. It's the same difference, just theft or robbery, armed robbery. The being, whatever he was easy to push aside, but it still taught me some of the intricacies of it. There's also another reference from Doctor Who, where the Doctor shrinks himself down along with a group of soldiers, and they go into this Dalek's eye stalk, which a Dalek is supposed to be like an Orion in like a metal casing, and goo in the center with an eyeball in the center is essentially what it is. A brain, goo with eyeball, no body. They're just degenerated down. What happens is they go into this eye stalk that's lit up, and the one soldier that's in, she goes, "Oh, this is beautiful. Oh, the light's beautiful." And the Doctor looks at her and goes, "It's the most dangerous place in the universe." And that's one of the best examples of that I've seen so far. That was making reference towards the soul trade. Not saying the soul trade, but they were making reference to it in their own way. But I saw that, and I was like, that's the best example. That, and an episode of Doctor Who, again, that there was this AI that was basically grabbing souls, sending them into their own afterlife, and those souls then, once the souls hit this like almost like not a waiting room, but like an office with a desk, and there was this AI hologram that said, "Oh, you made it to heaven. You made it to your afterlife, whatever that afterlife of that person happened to be." Yeah. And then those souls eventually ascended and went into Cybermen bodies that were encased in, again, watery tubes. And then they created they were part of an army that the cyber controller computer was using to try to invade Earth. In that, but that's essentially how they did it, how they tricked people into being uploaded into Cybermen bodies or consciousnesses into robots. And essentially like a synth, but these guys were more the old-fashioned robot looking, sci-fi robot looking, but essentially the same thing. It was a soul trap. When the doctor was trying to locate where a friend of theirs had gone, it's like, oh, the TARDIS seems to think he's alive somewhere. And they went to the other end of the energy conduit and found him in a Cyberman body and found the soul trap structure. It was like a cathedral, but with a bunch of like souls in robots. There was also one more reference in the Matt Smith era. That was Peter Capaldi era, but the Matt Smith era was where they went to this AI mainframe, and they called it the Church of the Papal Mainframe, where it was basically souls that were encompassed in like an AI mainframe. So I found these are all Soul Trap like references that were in these different shows. The bad guys hate it when I put them all side by side like that from different sources, because it's the same story being told a dozen, two, three or four dozen different ways.
Yeah,
that's how you know it's true, because other people are accessing it. So yeah,
and it makes people understand it better.
Yeah, it makes people understand it better. And these shows about the Elder Scrolls video games, even the Fallout series, have actually helped people to understand some of these concepts that they wouldn't have looked at the video game world before. Some people were irked. There was a bit of programming out there that got people to not look at it going, oh, that's video game, that's video game. But when I started to say, well, there's this real information there, you might want to take a look. And then you were telling the lore and everything, it started to make sense to people that weren't looking at it before. And it started to break that glass ceiling where at first it was just the video game crowd looking at it, is where it was needed, because they needed to look at it. Now it's broken through to some of these other areas that weren't looking at it because that programming's been shattered.
Even recently, there were some people that were a bit resistant in the comments, and I had to be like, no, you're not looking at it for the reason why it's being put out there. You're looking at it because you're coming at it from one side.
So some of the programming still exists. I saw that same comment, but it's starting to shatter. The program is starting to shatter in places because of this grounded information that's been put into the overall Benevolent Akejik. So it's spread. It's that same concept where somebody can invent an object over here and have an idea over here, and it ends up across the world over here. And somebody thinks that they have a trademark or copyright over here. They think somebody's stolen it. No, it's the overall Benevolent Akejik that it blends from one side to the other, and somebody else channels the information, or it comes to them as in a dream or idea. And that's how the system works. It's like a butterfly effect type of thing. So and so it's sometimes it's theft too. I'm not going to lie, but sometimes it's the other way as well. So but this may be a good place to take it out. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Brian.
I don't.
Okay,
I think we had a good show, and it will be informative for people who have not really heard much about this topic.
Oh yeah, it needs to be spoken about. I've spoken about it ad nauseum in other forums, with the soul trade, but it needed to be talked about in this forum as well. So and synchronicity wise, I've been actually doing my little recordings talking about aspects of this, not knowing what the topic was going to be today. So certain things have been popping up on TV talking about it. Things have been popping up where I've seen Soul Trap references and stuff. So it led up to today. So
yeah, I planned this out. I planned to do this one last week, and it was because I saw some stuff that was talking about soul traps online, and I was like, well, that's going to be a topic for next week. That'll be good because it seems to be making the rounds in media again.
The wheel will come around constantly until it's talked about more and more and more, because there are beings out there that want it changed, and since we're the wild, wild west here, we can actually make changes out there that community can't completely or won't. So this is a good place to take it out. Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of Disclosure in Media. And hopefully you were well informed in this episode. If you want to subscribe to our bigger forum, that's galacticinterstellarcouncil.com. There's some information on there that we were afraid was going to get canceled on the normal YouTube. It's under lock and key. There's some sales going on this month, and next month, look out on my Facebook, Christopher.S.Jacobs, for coupon codes that I'm putting up for that over the course of the year. So for sales and whatnot on products as well. So thank you, everybody, and bye-bye now.
Stay safe.